We're getting closer and closer to our big gas price catastrophe in California. There's 2 oil refineries closing soon. Gavin Newsom is suddenly doing a 180 on some of his anti-oil company, anti-oil and gas consumption policies because with the refineries closing, due entirely to Newsom's ridiculous policies, we are not going to be producing enough oil to meet our needs. In fact, the main oil pipeline we have in the state might get shut down because there's not enough oil in it to keep the pressure going. It's a severe situation. And we've been telling you about it for months. We're going to have 2 experts on after the 2 o'clock news. Michael Maché from USC, who's been talking about this with us for weeks now, and James Rector, a professor at UC Berkeley, whose research focuses on oil and gas reservoir geophysics. So we're in deep trouble here. And Newsom was trying to find some outside energy company to take over one of the oil refineries that's closing in Benicia up in Northern California, but he hasn't been able to. And it's because of the excessive taxes, the excessive regulation. The oil companies are slowly giving up. We're going to be down to, what, I think 6 refineries in the state. We used to have 40. So he's done quite a number on the oil infrastructure. Just absolute destruction. Really important. You should be listening to this. We've had Michael Maché on several times. He's a professor from USC. And he's coming on again, along with James Rector, a professor of civil and environmental engineering at UC Berkeley. Now, Rector's research focuses on oil and gas reservoir geophysics, among other things. They are both coming on because we're at a real crisis point here in California. We've told you about this. You could look at gas could be $8 a gallon. No kidding. Because we have 2 major refineries closing in the next few months. One in the Wilmington, Carson area, the other up in Northern California in the Bay Area in Benicia. And when they close, it means we will have lost 21% of California refinery capacity for gasoline, 21%. And California's crude production oil has fallen by 65% in the last 25 years. And it keeps going down. And this means a crisis. Newsom is trying feebly to address it. And we're going to talk about this now with Michael Maché from USC, James Rector from UC Berkeley. Michael, welcome.
Hey, John. Great to be with you today.
Thanks for coming on. And Professor Rector, welcome as well.
John, thanks for having me.
All right. I'm going to ask questions, and you guys can decide which among you want to answer it. You have slightly different expertise. We'll start with you, Michael. What is Newsom? He's really good at feeble public relations moves. What is he publicly trying to do to address this oil and gas shortage?
Well, there's a couple of things that the governor has brought forward. One, to his credit, he has acknowledged, regrettably, that for his sake, that there's an oil and gas crisis pending in California, and that a lot of the original research that was done by many of us is relatively correct in that effect. So he's brought forward this idea of SB 237, which is adding 2,000 oil permits a year and thinking that's going to increase production and help save the pipeline, along with the introduction of ethanol, E15 gasoline, thinking that's going to reduce the prices wholesale by at least 20 cents a gallon. So Professor Rector and I have been working on this together and come up with some really interesting results.
Well, Professor Rector, what are those results? Give us an idea.
Well, essentially, John, SB 237 is kind of a Band-Aid at this point. It's not a bad thing, but it does not address the crisis in a way that's going to do anything really substantive, particularly in the near term. And that's primarily because it's opening up Kern County. Kern County has a lot of oil, but it's expensive to get that oil. And with current crude oil prices of $57 a barrel or something like that, It's just not that economic to go hog wild over there. If the governor really wants to do something and address this problem, he's got to open up production in areas like the LA Basin and offshore in Santa Barbara.
Because it's cheaper to get the oil out of those areas?
Probably by 50%.
Well, that's a lot. And
Yeah.
And offshore seems to be an area he'll never touch.
It doesn't seem so at this point, but I think that there's a lot of new science that's coming out, or regurgitated old science, that says that in some areas offshore, it's actually a good thing to drill and produce oil, particularly in the Santa Barbara Channel, because of all the seep emissions, which dwarf any oil spill that'll ever happen from a pipeline.
I see. So if they pump the oil out, then there'll be less seepage on the
Correct.
ocean floor. Let's talk about the pipeline. It's called the Crimson Pipeline. It's the major north-south artery here in the state. And Michael, you write it's about to collapse and most likely will close by March 31st. And this is because of a lack of oil flowing through it. Can you explain it so people listening can understand?
Sure. Thank you, John. It's a pipeline, and so there's two parts to this pipeline. There's the front part, which is the oil going in, and there's the back part, which is the oil coming out. Well, you're losing a refinery up north that's one of the consumers of the oil in the pipeline. So that customer is going away, and that demand is going away. So that part of the pipeline is going to collapse. Simultaneously, as our work has shown, in Kern County, we can produce more oil as a result of 237, and Jamie can walk you through the numbers. But the numbers don't suggest that they will save the pipeline. In other words, they're insufficient. So what's happening simultaneously is, on one end, there's no market for the oil. That's gone away. On the other end, they're not putting enough oil in the pipeline, so it's just beginning to collapse, and that will be borderline catastrophic for the state.
Does it come to a point where the oil industry has to shut the pipeline, or it stops on itself because of a lack of pressure, the way a hydrant starts dribbling out water and then the firefighters can't use it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's very similar in that sense. So the operation of the pipeline has two components to it. We call it the double E, which is the engineering and the economics. You need enough product in the pipeline, like a fire hydrant, to have enough pressure to move the product through the pipeline and come out the other end. And there's not enough product in the pipeline for that. And then correspondingly, the pipeline is run by an independent operator, and they make their money off the number of barrels flowing through the pipeline. So they have operating costs. And if there's not enough barrels flowing through the pipeline, they operate at a loss. And that's precisely what's occurring right now at Crimson. I believe they're sustaining around $2 million a month in losses. And over the course of time, they cannot continue to sustain that. So we can expect a collapse.
James, Michael said you can tell us more about the numbers involved here.
In terms of the amount of oil going through the pipeline at this point?
Yeah.
John?
Yeah. Like how much is it going to drop by?
Well, if the pipeline shuts down, we're talking about 50, 60,000 barrels that don't reach, say, the Bay Area from Kern County, and that's a lot of crude oil. What has to happen then is that has to be made up by other either transportation mechanisms, like you can still truck the oil from on I-5 from Kern County to the remaining Bay Area refinery. So you can do that, but you can imagine that each oil tanker maybe has 250 barrels of capacity, and you're talking about trucking 50,000 barrels. So you can kind of do the math as to how much increased trucking that's going to be on I-5.
That's crazy. This is kind of staggering, the extent of the problem here.
Yeah, it is.
It's a big-
And as Jamie mentioned, now if you do 60,000 barrels to sort of put that in regular terms for the rest of us, that's a lot of gallons of gasoline. Okay, that is like over 2 million gallons of gasoline.
So the whole gasoline market is going to collapse here, and that's why the price is going to potentially be so high.
It'll
Well,
the price
there
will
are
hit
real
the hardest in northern.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go. Okay, the price will hit the hardest in Northern California versus Southern. But if you lose 60,000 barrels a day in that pipeline, as Professor Rector has suggested, that's 2.5 million gallons of gasoline a day, or 2.5 million gallons of oil a day, not going north.
All right, hang on the line. We're talking with, speaking was Michael Miche, professor at USC, and also James Rector, professor at UC Berkeley. And what we have here is a collapse of our oil and gas industry in California because of Gavin Newsom's absurd policies, regulations, and taxes. We've got 2 refineries closing in California in a matter of months, which can lead to the main north-south pipeline collapsing by the end of March. And you're going to have a shortage of oil being produced in the north and a shortage of gas refinery activity going on as well. I mean, it's a complete mess, just a total mess. And I want to talk about shortages when we come back. All right, we'll continue with Michael Miche and James Rector next. We're going to have a major crisis. There's so little oil in the pipeline that by March, it may just shut down. Lack of oil, lack of pressure, just isn't going to work anymore. Let's get Michael Miche and James Rector back on the line. Michael, Newsom seems to be cornered here. Is there anything he can do?
He's got some options available to him. As Professor Rector mentioned, we have offshore oil, and I'll let you walk through those numbers, but there's an abundance of offshore oil that can be brought into the system. There's also oil in Los Angeles County that can be brought into the system. It's traditional oil and insurance. So,
all right, Michael, your phone is malfunctioning. So just let's make a new connection with Michael, and I'll talk to James Rector in the meantime. So Michael is just talking about how there's oil in the LA basin, there's oil offshore. Is that oil easily recoverable now on short notice?
Yeah, that's a great question, John. In fact, some of it is and some of it isn't. For the large majority of it, we're talking 2 to 3 years. And we're still going to need oil in 2 to 3 years, so that's doable. As far as short term and the pipeline supply issues to the Bay Area, there is oil that can come online, roughly somewhere in the range of 20 to 50,000 barrels nearly immediately, and that is offshore Santa Barbara in the Santa Ynez unit. It's operated by a company known as Sable Offshore, and they have been thwarted in bringing their oil to market because of the state essentially saying that the pipeline that they are going to use to bring it to Bakersfield is inadequate, and they are basically stopping them from bringing this oil to market. Now, even that oil has issues because it can't go north. There really is no solution for going north other than trucking, importing more gasoline, importing more oil, or somehow bringing oil via rail from someplace like North Dakota. So he is kind of against a wall with regards to Northern California supply in the near term. And the problem with importing more oil is that the terminals are pretty much full right now. They can't handle any more imported oil, and there are no pipelines. This is something that people don't realize. There are no pipelines that come from anywhere in the United States to California. So either we get it via boat or in-state. Those are the only two options, or by rail or truck.
How quickly can they make deals with foreign countries to get more oil sent here? Assuming there was a place to put it.
Yeah, there's no place to put it. So the time that it would take to get new terminals built and new storage tanks, this crisis is months. That would take years.
It seems like a lot of these potential solutions would take years.
Yes.
Michael, do people in Sacramento, I'm talking about the legislators here and people in Newsom's administration, do they know in what kind of deep doo-doo they're in?
I think some of them do. But again, I think some of them are in denial. You'll hear, the market will take care of this. Well, the market will, but not necessarily the way you want it to, which, will result in increasing prices and things like that. I just did a quick calculation, and to take care of those 60,000 barrels of oil that Jamie talked about, if they left the pipeline, to truck them up there, you would have over 200 additional trucks on I-5 a day going up and down that freeway. So I don't think Sacramento, some of the legislative members in Sacramento are honestly even capable of getting their head around some of this, let alone coming up with a solution.
This is a political earthquake, is it not?
Well, if you have national aspirations, if you have national aspirations for something like the presidency, which perhaps the governor has, it would be very hard to go into other states saying, hey, we have really good clean air, but no gasoline and $8 or $9 a gallon gasoline prices and get away with it. I mean, you're looking at below $3 a gallon in states like Louisiana and Florida and some of these others.
Could he just suddenly reverse a lot of the taxes and a lot of the regulations tonight? Would that change things, or would it take too long? Is there any, I guess, would that stop the refineries from closing if he suddenly backed off on all this regulation and all these taxes?
Well, the taxes would have an immediate impact if you back down the California state excise tax, which is the highest in the country at around 61.2 cents a gallon. If you back that down to the national average, you take 30 cents off of that. And you would be average at that, and that would have a favorable impact on the consumer. But I don't think the refiners are in a position where they even want to entertain staying in the state. And you can base that on what we got from Valero. Valero had the state legislature and members of the CEC and the governor's office shopped the Valero refinery around, and even threw as much as $280 million at them to stay in the state. Valero wouldn't stay in the state, and no one wanted to buy the refinery. So I think California has really created a desperate situation for itself through its attitude, its very, very hostile business environment for the refiners and oil producers, and its own legislative actions. And ultimately, it's the hard work in California who's going to bear that on their back.
All right. Thank you for coming on, Michael Maché from USC. And James Rector, thank you for coming on from UC Berkeley. It was good talking with you.
Thank you, John.
All right.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Thanks. Well, there's a lot of good news there.